In the very first cabinet meeting of NDA 3.0 chaired by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the newly formed government approved the construction of 3 crore homes under Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana or PMAY. Out of this, 1 crore homes are to be provided under PMAY-Urban or in cities of India. Now, there's no doubt PMAY-Urban has achieved far better housing for low-income families than any other scheme which preceded it under the UPA tenure. According to a comprehensive report by researcher and journalist team of Chintan Patel and Vaibhav Jain, the NDA has delivered nearly 10 times as many homes since 2015-16. This is commendable, but the massive shortage of housing for those at the bottom of the pyramid living in any of India's top cities remains quite stark. So how much of a difference will additional 1 crore homes sanctioned by the cabinet make? This is Sangam Vihar, Asia's largest unauthorized colony in South Delhi. Narrow kacha-pakka roads, haphazard layout, unstable housing structures on tiny plot of land, open sewage, cattle, bikes jostling with humans for space, waste dumps and very scarce water resources. The reason why we are showing you Sangam Vihar is because that's where my house help Husna Bano and many like her want to buy a tiny one-bedroom set for their families. But for an unauthorized construction, she will have to withdraw all her life savings, cobble up loans from friends and employers to come up with the 18 lakh rupees she needs. PMAY-Urban leaves out lakhs of families like Husna Bano who've moved to Delhi decades ago to earn a livelihood. Is this a fixable problem? Under the newly sanctioned 1 crore homes, joining me to get to the bottom of it, Vaibhav Jain, independent researcher, Dr. Niranjan Hiranandani, founder and MD of Hiranandani Group, and Dr. Partha Mukhopadhyay, Senior Fellow, Center for Policy Research. This time, I'm going to go to the youngest on the panel, Vaibhav. Excellent report on PMAY. My question is, you've captured a lot of what went missing in the previous PMAY-Urban. New 1 crore homes have got sanctioned. What do you think they will achieve? And what do you think they won't?
Manisha, first of all, thanks for having me. And the newly sanctioned 1 crore homes, that's really welcome news because with the previously sanctioned 1.2 crore homes, we were only going to address about 37% of the real housing need in India. And that's based on a very conservative estimate of about 3.18 crore homes that are needed. And that's per the Ministry of Home and Urban Affairs estimates. So this newly sanctioned 1 crore homes, they'll put the actual sort of demand, housing demand met to about 70%. But if you look at a more reasonable estimate that's been put out by the ICRIER, this will address just about 50% of the real demand, even with the additional 1 crore homes sanctioned, because the actual urban affordable housing shortage is to the tune of 5 crore houses.
Mm-hmm. So less than 50%. In fact, you're saying if it's 5 crores and we're going to achieve about 2.18 crores, is even less than 50%. All right. Yeah. So a long way to travel. We'll come to how do we meet that shortage and whether we can do it in the next 5 years. What do we need to step up? Mr. Hiranandani, your reaction first to what are we going to achieve with these new 1 crore sanctioned homes?
Manisha, happy to be with you on the panel again. Thank you for inviting me. I'm very excited. Can you imagine one of the first decisions in the first cabinet meeting has been relating to housing. And it was also taking into consideration the affordable segment, which has actually as a percentage been going down in terms of total sales in the country, subsequent to the exhaustion of the availability of the CLSS scheme for affordable housing, which has taken place. So in reality, the PMAY scheme got exhausted somewhere in August, September last year. Mm-hmm. And subsequent to that, we have seen a steep fall in the sales of affordable housing units. So I think this is the first thing which they have been able to address, and this should actually bring back the demand for affordable housing, because with interest rates going up from 6.5% to 8.6, 8.7% on an average of most of the banks and financial institutions, the affordability of these housing had actually come down. And that is why this coming back with the scheme is extremely important. Of course, if RBI reduces the interest rates, that's going to be a second whammy. And hopefully during the course of the year, that should start coming down. And over a period of time, interest rates should come down to 6.5%, 7% at the most. I think once the international situation does. The best part of this scheme is the fact that our first assessment in 2014, 15, 16 was 1.25 crores housing, which was deficit.
Right.
And the target was 1.1 crore housing, which was supposed to exhaust and take care of the 100%. But now Vaibhav has corrected us completely and has shown us that it was not correct. The original assessment of
the numbers are
1.1
much
crore
larger, Mr. Hiranandani,
is
and
certainly not going to take place.
You know, we don't really need an ICRIA to tell us. I mean, look at the number of people who are without homes, and it's not just, you know, house help that works with us. It's also people who are starting out in their careers and are not, you know, bankers and in very high-flying professions. They're not able to afford homes for till very late in their life. But I'll come back to you, sir. You know, you mentioned something which is very interesting, and I'd like to just remind the audience of what's happened on affordable housing that Mr. Hiranandani has mentioned. Affordable housing, which is houses under 40 lakh rupees, have continued to decline in terms of launches by private developers. They've come down to 18% of total launches in 2023, down from 26% in 2021. And a significant 40% in 2018. So 40% of homes in 2018 used to be launched by private developers, which were 40 lakh rupees and slightly below. But by 2023, this number has come down to 18%. Partha Mukhopadhyay, as an economist who studies cities, give us your sense of PMAY. It is a global problem. I mean, affordable housing is an issue that even United States is dealing with. It's not just India. We, unfortunately, are sitting on a very rapidly growing young population and very rapid urbanization together.
It's not as bad as it seems. First, I think it's useful to break up the problem into bite-sized chunks. There are the really large cities, the Bombays and the Delhis in which we live in and which you're familiar with, where there is a serious problem. And the problem is the price of land. And that sort of is what leads developers like Mr. Hiranandani, quite rightly from their point of view, to first focus on making sure that, especially after the COVID slump and so on and so forth, that you move into reclaim the elite segment, the high-end segment, and then sort of come back into the mid-range and the lower segments, which are now sort of, as you said, has dropped off. And the CLSS scheme was a large subsidy. In fact, it was per capita the largest subsidy. So the middle class got quote unquote more, but middle class is hard to define because you said your help who works in would be somebody who could qualify. But that person will most probably not be able to get a CLSS. Not because she is not qualified, but because the banks and the credit ratings and structures would not be able to put that structure in place, right? So let's take the big cities aside. In all the other smaller cities, which is like 2-3 million downwards, you're looking at most of this problem being solved, and it's been solved in two ways. One, we must remember that the housing shortage is not just a problem of the government. The supply comes from the public sector as well as enormous supply from the private sector.
Right.
You'll see the sort of redevelopment that's happening across even Delhi's colonies, 2 floors becoming 4 floors in structures. And so the 1 crore houses which have been built, especially under BLC, those are the houses that you will see most probably a number of them growing a 2nd floor, putting it out for rent. The same thing will happen with the new stock that's coming in.
I'm going to come back to Vaibhav because Vaibhav has really broken down PMAY very interestingly into different verticals. Two verticals which we've already discussed because they've been very successful, which is beneficiary-led individual house construction or enhancement where, you know, the family already has land and then the central government offers 1.5 lakh assistance and additional assistance of 1 lakh is offered by state state governments for the person or the family to build homes. And the second is CLSS, which is credit linked subsidy scheme, where you buy a unit, but you already have some credit worthiness, you have regular income coming in, and again you get some part of your loan as subsidy upfront. Vaibhav, break it down for us and tell us how well have BLC and CLSS worked versus what has not worked actually, who's not benefited?
Manisha, before I do that, if I can take a quick couple of seconds to go over one statistic called the price to income ratio, which for India stands at 11, which means that it would take an average Indian family 11 years of 100% of its income to be able to afford a home. And mind you, this is an average for the whole of India, and the big cities that Dr. Mukhopadhyay and Dr. Hiranandani mentioned. For them, for those cities like Delhi, Mumbai, this statistic is likely to be much worse. And to sort of give you a baseline figure for the US, this number is less than 4. It's 3.6. And now coming to your question
11 years
about
of your entire income, 100% of your
That's
income
right.
going before you can repay your loan or own a home in India versus four years in the US.
This number was reported by the CSEP. But yeah, coming back to your question about the different verticals. So yes, as you mentioned, we have discussed CLSS and BLC. These are the two most successful verticals of the PMAY-Urban. In fact, close to 85% of all the houses that were sanctioned by the scheme fall under these two verticals. But the problem with these two verticals, as you also alluded to, is that they benefit that segment of the urban poor which already have access to either land or capital, whereas the poorest of the poor who have no credit worthiness, at least on paper, and who don't have access to land, they get completely left out. The ISSR, which is the in situ slum redevelopment, and AHP, which is the affordable housing in partnership vertical, these two primarily address that segment of the population, and just about 15% of homes under PMAY have been sanctioned for them. So that's the real gap. And I hope the new 1 crore homes that have been sanctioned, they lay more emphasis on these two verticals of the scheme.
Which is really for people who don't have access to capital and who do not have access to land. But let me come back, and I'm going to ask both our other guests on how can we make that possible, because both of them are big thinkers when it comes to housing and urbanization. Stay with us. The very first decision taken by the newly formed cabinet of ministers this week was to sanction 3 crore homes under PMAY or Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. On a Twitter post following the cabinet announcement, Prime Minister Modi posted, "This decision also reflects our commitment to make the living standards of the people easier. This will not only fulfill the need of people for houses, but will also provide them a quality of life. The expansion of PMAY also brings out our determination for development of all and social justice, Sabka Vikas or Samaj Kalyan." That's precisely what we are focusing on, PMAY, but urban. It is the urban agenda, and how do we close the wide gap of affordable housing in India's top cities? Mr. Hiranandani, you talked about CLSS and you said, yes, if interest rates come down, affordability per se will increase. But my question to you is, sir, and which is why developers are also shrinking their addition of affordable homes which are priced between 25 and 40 lakh rupees, because below that, I think developers don't enter that segment. What about land prices which are skyrocketing? Is there a solution to that, or do you believe that that ship has sailed in top cities, for top cities?
Manisha, we can solve all the problems if we look at addressing it and taking care of it. Let's look at all the situations that we've had. Take, for instance, slums, for instance. We've solved the problem of land as far as slums in Mumbai is concerned. We have a policy in place by which the value of the land is actually, in fact, made zero and then brought about to use the value of the land for the purposes of rehabilitation free of cost for the slum. There again, our achievement has been only 5% of the total amount of the slums redevelopment that is there. And so we have a long way to go. I mean, 500,000 houses is our target as far as the next 5 to 7 years is concerned. And I don't know whether the PMAY scheme is really going to assist it. Last time, Maharashtra took very little share in using the PMAY slum policy part of it for the purpose of rehabilitation for Mumbai is concerned. But I believe a new policy is expected from Maharashtra government in the next fortnight for the purposes of Mumbai slums. So I think something on that end could be a possibility. So there we will solve the land problem. The second problem, which is a bigger problem, is the fact that the cost of FSI, additional FSI given by the state government and the ready-reckoner values have been increased so badly that there is no possibility in Mumbai having an affordable house if you look at the ready-reckoner value, construction cost, and the FSI cost which is available to you. So in reality, this is not possible. Again, they have a solution. We did it in COVID. In COVID, we reduced the stamp duty and the other costs by 50%. And suddenly the sale of affordable housing shot up. I mean, we increased it by 2 times in that short period where the total land values were, the construction and additional FSI plus stamp duty was reduced. So we had a solution for that also.
Very interesting points you've made, because the least successful has been the in situ slum redevelopment vertical under PMAY, and that's about 2.5%. So that definitely needs to change in a very big way. Partha, is that what you also feel, that, focus now probably on the ones who do not have land and capital this time around, shift the focus?
ISSR and IHP are not going to work.
It will not work.
They are not meant to work. Fundamentally, the structure is the kind of schemes that they are. When you want a house, you need a certain degree of aspiration. So let's say your house help, let's go back to her, 18 lakhs. She most probably makes about 20, 25. Maybe her family makes more. So automatically about 3 lakhs, essentially the price to income ratio of 6, which is about half of what Vaibhav was talking about. And that's in Delhi, right? So there is private supply at a very different level. There is no financing. So one of the issues that would need to be figured is we have banks who won't touch things with a barge pole because of the way the RBI regulates them. We have variety of housing finance companies that have come up. We have now enormous improvement in credit scores because of UPI and other such digital tracking. And we need to start thinking about how do we get more credit into people who actually have these kinds of things.
Okay, so we have two very, very varying points on at least the slum redevelopment, not the AHP program or AHP vertical.
Looking forward to what's happening in Bombay.
Very quickly, I have literally 30 seconds to get a concluding remark from you.
Yes, I just want to make couple of quick points. One, for AHP and ISSR, even with the currents that have happened, there's 5.6 lakh such homes that have remained unoccupied because, as the Parliamentary Standing Committee found out, they were built with substandard material. The quality of construction was lacking.
Very poor.
So that's another thing to look into as we move forward into the next segment. And the last point that I want to make, which Dr. Mukhopadhyay referred to, was about the rental situation. There's another fifth sort of hidden vertical of this scheme, which is called the affordable rental housing complexes.
Yes.
And this was added only during COVID. And under this vertical, just about 35,000 houses have been sanctioned or have been made available. This this figure needs to be in the lakhs and in the tens of lakhs if we want to solve the urban housing crisis in India. Because before ownership, rentals is definitely available.
I think rental housing is a very large discussion. And you're right, Dr. Mukhopadhyay, people don't all the time want to own a home when they come to a city. A lot of them have little homes in their villages and they're quite happy with it. They just want affordable homes to live in and have a dignified living. Varied points, but exciting times ahead. 1 crore additional homes under PMAY, which is a huge welcome step. Dr. Niranjan Hiranandani, Dr. Partha Mukhopadhyay, and Vaibhav, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you, Manisha.
Thank you, Pradhan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we might need far more concerted efforts to put a roof over the heads of those who have no land or capital to begin with. We still do have hope that in the third term, NDA will focus on housing for those who really need them, whether through rental or through ownership in cities of all shapes and sizes. Thank you so much for joining me.